Hey guys, Drifter here. Today I've got a video for you about the topic that's on everybody's mind today, which is, why did Elon Musk buy Twitter? Why is it worth that much? Is it a personal vanity project? Is it a business decision? Are there political aspirations? We're going to talk about all of that and more in today's video, which is going to be more opinion and less fact than normal for me. I'm just offering you my opinion on this buyout, though we will cover some basic facts. And one basic fact you may not know about me is that I'm extremely active on Twitter. If you're interested in following me on Twitter, I linked it down there below in the description. I post 8 to 12 videos a day there, roughly. Kind of short form content, kind of like TikTok and shorts. Reply to fans, super followers. Very busy, very easy to get in touch with. So YouTube is ultimately my most important platform, but I'm probably the most active on Twitter. So somebody buying out my most active platform and making it private is something that is very interesting to me. And it kind of went in a crazy way. So Elon put a poll out on Twitter complaining about Twitter's censorship, suppression of views, and lack of freedom of speech. And he believes that Twitter should be upheld to the sort of American standard of freedom of speech. Should I buy it? It's kind of like a joke poll, does this all the time. Of course, everybody votes yes. Then he says he's going to do it. Twitter says they don't want to sell. Elon offers more money. SEC says okay. Twitter says we don't want to sell. We're going to do the poison pill to try to thwart you. Elon changes the deal, very slightly, mind you, and all of a sudden that answer turns to yes. That was a little bit of a corporate dance to go through. It wasn't a here's the money buyout. There was a little bit of a complication there. But if you're wondering how he got the money to do that, it was almost certainly a leveraged buyout against his ownership of Tesla shares. So what you can do is take out a loan on your stocks and use that loan money to buy whatever you want. This is a financing tactic that billionaires do all the time, and they can pay off the interest rates with the dividends from the stocks or whatever it is that they're doing. And you can also do leveraged buyouts where you get a loan to buy massive corporations as long as what you're putting up for equity is roughly equal in value. So he gets to keep the shares, buy the company, and does accrue personal or at least corporate debt, but it's easy to get out of that when you have a lot of money. The bigger question is, why did Elon Musk buy Twitter? Now, the sort of textbook paper answer could be, is Twitter undervalued as a company? Perhaps he noticed something that nobody else did. Perhaps Twitter is turning more revenue or more profit or better margins than somebody else. Perhaps they just developed a new technology that's getting ready to explode. We don't know, but as soon as Elon Musk got involved, all of a sudden Vanguard and a lot of other big investment firms were suddenly involved in wanting to buy out Twitter. And some of this is riding Elon's coattails and hype spending. But big companies, especially ones like Vanguard, which are extremely conservative, typically don't invest in like YOLO speculative investments. There had to be some kind of value there. And the value that Elon Musk says that he's bringing to Twitter is one of public service, of freedom of speech. Twitter is probably more in the crosshairs of freedom of speech advocates than YouTube or Facebook these days, because Twitter will censor you. Twitter will remove tweets and take down posts if it doesn't agree with their agenda, for lack of a better words. Most of this is about stopping racism, threats against people, and just really bizarre conspiracy theories that are destructive. But even as much as I don't like those things, I do have to admit that removing them is a form of censorship and not true freedom of speech. Now, we've covered this on the channel a whole bunch of times. A corporation like Twitter is not beholden to the same rules of freedom of speech as an individual or perhaps a government platform. But critics will argue that if Twitter is performing the role of a public communications platform, if it performs the role of a public platform or of a public service, then it should be beholden to the same kind of public service rules for any other platform. So there's a pretty good argument there on the public service freedom of speech thing. I think that he wants to roll back some of the censorship and let Twitter be a little bit wild again. There's also the possibility that this is purely for Elon's pride or vanity. What if he got tired of owning SpaceX and, making ships and then making Tesla cars? What if he wanted to own a piece of conversation? What if he wanted to be the king of Twitter? What if he just wanted to be a kingmaker, ban some people, unverify some people, give fake followers to people, just screw with the whole social media fabric of the country? He could do that. I don't know if that's going to happen. I really don't know the man personally, so I can't offer you any opinions about his personality, but that is a possibility. Another possibility is political goals, because like it or not, Twitter is sort of the platform of politics. You see more official announcements on Twitter, more political burns, more trash talking, more interesting and politically engaging stuff on Twitter than you do on Facebook or YouTube. Don't get me wrong, politics on Facebook and YouTube are massive, and probably much more massive than Twitter. Twitter is a small player comparatively, but Twitter is the very public-facing, very formal player in this game. So if you own Twitter, you own a guiding force in the politics, not only of the United States, but kind of the whole world, because a lot of other countries use it the same way that we do. One of the immediate things I saw people saying on Twitter is all of a sudden he's going to let Trump back, he's going to unban Trump, and Trump is going to come back to Twitter and say all sorts of crazy stuff. Trump today said that he doesn't want to go back to Twitter. He's sticking with Truth Social, which I'm a little bit surprised by, given that the stock price has tanked like 50-something% since it launched, and there's user base issues, and the president doesn't seem to be posting there very much. I assumed he would run back to Twitter. I figured they would have pumped and dumped that and rinsed and washed that money and been gone, but somebody out there is a true believer in Truth Social, and apparently the former president may be one of them, but not to detract from the point. The point is that if you own a big politically active platform like Twitter, you sort of have your hands at the levers and wheels of the conversation, the ethos of our entire society. You can guide it in ways that you want. Now that can be left, that can be right, that can be pro-corporate, neoliberal. It can be 1,000 different things, and it really just kind of depends on what it is that Elon wants to do. All of these are ultimately a little bit more in the speculative and more opinionated range right now. Elon's stated goal for buying Twitter was that he wanted to make it a bastion of free speech, and he said that he wanted to realize Twitter's true potential. He said he felt that Twitter could be much more, much bigger, much more profitable, and that's true. Twitter is the small player compared to Facebook and Google and Amazon and these other kind of companies. I don't know, maybe Elon just got tired of being the only billionaire that doesn't own a social media platform. He did propose some changes shortly after talking about this. He said he wanted to drop the price of Twitter Blue by about $1, make it $1.99 per month. Interestingly, he wanted people to be able to pay for Twitter Blue through cryptocurrency if they wanted to, including Dogecoin, and that sent the price of Dogecoin not to the moon, but up a little bit again. It's not going back to the dollar, the almost dollar it was anytime soon. And Elon also proposed verification changes, which I feel a little bit mixed about, but might be very good. The short version is that to get verified on Twitter right now, you kind of need to be published or have an agency or know somebody that knows a guy. It's kind of like a buddy-buddy system. It's very hard to get verified, even if you're famous. Even truly famous people with tons of followers won't get verified if their content is crass or sort of against the agenda or just difficult to monetize. But what Elon wants to do is change that to where you can submit, I think his proposed plan was you buy Twitter Blue, just $2 a month, then you can optionally submit your real life information, driver's license, something like that, to verify you are who you say you are. And then after they approve, you will be verified and get the same blue check mark as all those gamers and other influencers out there. So regular people can be verified as real regular people. And I think this is a fantastic step in removing bots from the platform. There are tons of people that just run big bot farms. And there's also a ton of people that just have burner accounts. It'd always just be something like name and then a whole ton of numbers, and the moment you see that, you know they're going to say something crazy because it's their burner account, and those are usually very entertaining. But this could in theory let you know if you're talking to a real person or a troll or a bot based on the verification. The downside there, and perhaps this is selfish for me, is I'm in the blue checkmark club. I'm in the verified club. It's a very nice club to be in. It's like, hey, you're like a real celebrity. You're like really famous. This is the real you. Nobody is copying you. Nobody's stealing your brand or your stuff. And if all of a sudden everybody's verified, well, then that service kind of becomes useless to me. Just like the little check mark I have here on YouTube, it helps people know whether or not they're being scammed. Like every time I do a crypto video or like a financial advice video, there are tons of people that make fake drifter accounts with one letter or a space or something different, and they reply down there in the comments. And unfortunately, I've gotten a number of angry emails about some of you that have clicked those links thinking that was me and that you got robbed of hundreds or thousands of dollars, which is very sad, and I try to remove them, but there's no stopping that flood. But therein lies the problem, that if they're going to have thousands, potentially millions of people that are getting verified, there's going to be bad actors that get verified. They're going to get verified on stolen information, fake services. Somebody else could get verified as me, potentially, if they had access to my driver's license. So there needs to be some sort of safety and protection, especially not for the big brands, not for people like me because I'm special and I need my special treatment, but rather a designator to know that this is a real account and not some weird scam artist follow me on WhatsApp and talk to Dr. So-and-so about investing. So that's a big change for me. I do want to talk about Twitter's technology backbone a little bit. Twitter is an old platform and it really hasn't changed that much. Its tech backbone is still very simple. I think for the most part, it's HTML based. I think they even still support the thing where you can text message the number your tweets. That was an old one. Like before you had internet on your phones, you could text tweets to like a server somewhere and Twitter would post them. I think they still support that. But all these other companies, I'm going to compare mostly to Facebook and Google, have very sophisticated tracking algorithms, nudge algorithms, dark and light algorithms for various purposes, manipulative ones. They can scan any image and tell you a lot about what's in it, especially text. They can scan any video, or kind of like here on YouTube, if you're watching with the automatic closed captions down there, that was not added for accessibility. Google did not add closed captions because they give a flip about deaf people, or how you watch this. They added it so that their bots can make scripts of everything that I talk about in this video to determine its monetizability. Now, Twitter as a platform has basically none of this stuff. It's left in the dust. It's ages old. And I think that Elon wants to take this old tech and update it to something modern, because you can do much better things with YouTube and Twitch-like tech and Facebook-like tech and change the way the algorithms work. Now, we almost exclusively have a negative opinion of this because these algorithms are almost exclusively manipulating people into doing things they wouldn't otherwise do, but you can use this responsibly, which leads me to the next section of possible fun changes. I would love to see Twitter gaming get a streaming section like Twitch. Now, you can stream on Twitter, and I think they have super likes or something that are kind of like subscriptions, but people don't really do it. It's very underdeveloped. It's like capped out at it's like 720p 30 and not the best encoding. It's not very fun. Twitter could have a much better video streaming algorithm, much better video playback and image encoding algorithm in general, because it encodes everything into a very, very low bit rate. Twitter could have a better search function if Elon took control of it. It could be easier to find people. It could be easier to find tags. It could be easier to find certain tweet chains or topics, or better sorting of the hashtags. There's also the possibility that everybody could be able to edit their tweets. I think the best way to do this is if you have a tweet and you say something and you edit it, there should be an option for you to like click to see what the person originally said before they edited. I feel like that would be a fantastic idea. Or one of the best ideas would be kind of similar to EU law, and I don't know how Elon's going to get along with this, but in case you didn't see it, the Digital Services Act passed in the European Union, and the most important part of it, from what I read, is that it forces large social media companies to disclose how their algorithms work, not only to the general public so that you as a customer know what it's doing, but also to researchers, government officials, and experts so that they can monitor how this is being used and if these algorithmic manipulations are being used safely, appropriately, etc. So now that Elon bought Twitter, he's going to be subject to those rules in the UK, and the man does not like being told what to do, so I can't imagine that goes well. But what would be super cool is if you could choose an algorithmic feed like Instagram or YouTube, where it just pops up and shows you things that it thinks you're going to like. Or you could maybe hit one button and just go straight back to that old chronological feed with no sorting whatsoever. I love that one. It was just a timeline of now. What's the newest thing that we can do? And I thought it was fantastic. So I hope we get some changes like that. But I do have fears as well. My biggest fear is that Elon Musk's version of free speech is going to be far more YOLO than it is now. I would think that for what I do here on this channel, I'm a free speech advocate. And I advocate for people to speak freely, even about topics that I vehemently disagree about. A variety of conspiracy theories, alternative medicines, politics, blah, blah, blah. I don't like it. I'll argue with them. I'll tell them they're wrong, dumb, stupid, ugly, and their grandma smells like cheese. But they should be allowed to say those things. Now, the problem is that when you mix this in with social media and some of the classic problems, yelling fire in a loud theater, unlimited free speech on social media would be like the Taliban having their official account, the Nazis have their account, NAMBLA would have their account, they can just post whatever. True freedom of speech would be tons of bots and spam and crypto scams and all sorts of crazy nonsense, kind of like what you see on Telegram. The pandemic, vaccines kill babies, inject bleach into your eyes, or whatever in the world. I don't think that Elon's going to do that, because when you make a platform have that much freedom, it becomes so YOLO that nobody wants to be there. It becomes who can fit the most N-words into one tweet. The advertisers leave. A lot of the users find it unsavory and they leave, and it just kind of turns into like a troll fest, like 4chan. So there does need to be some kind of moderation, some kind of consideration, some sort of balance here to keep it free speech, but also not completely crazy. And what I'm afraid of is that Elon's version might be like what Twitter's is now. So Twitter definitely has a left-wing bias. Most of the big social media companies do, primarily about right-wing conspiracy theories. But Elon, as the sole owner, could take it the exact opposite way, and CNN is just banned from the platform entirely, and all the blue checkmark Democrat gang just gets unverified and stuff like that. It could go completely the opposite crazy, or it could be his personal playground where Elon is super verified with a red badge or something like that. And if you insult Elon Musk, if you talk bad about Tesla, if you put out a tweet there saying that Tesla's earnings are going to be less than they project for this quarter, banned, destroyed, removed from the platform. And that's something that he would have a unilateral right and freedom to do, regardless of how much he preached about other things, which is kind of scary. The other thing that scares me is the potential for a pump and dump of the company, because he's going to buy the company at a certain value and take it private. He's going to make some changes. Elon has a lot of hype around him. People invest in Elon companies. They're like true believers. It's like a religion. It's very weird. And when you can make the company public again after these changes, hype it up super hard, price gets really high, and then just sell all of it and dip and don't really care what happens in the long run. A lot of rich and famous people do pump and dumps. You see it at smaller scales for like every influencer ever doing NFTs. There's also the possibility of mismanagement. Owning a manufacturing facility versus owning an extremely mathematically complex algorithm advertisement sorting facility is very different things. So he may not have the skills, or the people that he brings on board may not have the skills to manage it properly, even with the best intentions in mind, because sometimes you can do your best in life and still fail. You can make no mistakes and still lose, and that could totally happen here. And then my final fear is more of a broad expression of a question: should billionaires have exclusive control over our most popular communications platforms? I think most of you would say no. I don't think most of you want like every billionaire to have their own platform. But the reality is it's kind of always been that way. From the very beginning of the tech boom, the richest of the rich people own the platforms. Even before that, if you're talking about television, which was radical, that was mostly controlled by a small network of corporations. You can see the same thing in radio or print media, and even old telephones. I mean, AT&T was $1 billion company in like 1930. So billionaires have owned our communications for a very long time, and this isn't really a significant departure for that. What's significant about it is that it's a very famous billionaire, it's very direct, and it's going to be in a very personal kind of way, whereas the other ones would be more like faceless suits. And that's kind of all of my opinions about this issue. I hope that in some way, listening to me, you've learned something useful. As you can see, I have trepidations, I have fears. I'm afraid that Elon is going to do something crazy and go very YOLO with my favorite platform. But until those things happen, I'm going to keep posting, I'm going to keep doing my thing, keep having fun, and just pray that I'm totally wrong and that everything's going to work out great. Maybe we'll get some of those nice technological overhauls. Guys, if you enjoyed this video, if you learned something useful, don't forget to like, favorite, and subscribe. Drifter out.